Hello.
Hi there.
Today is June the 2nd, 2023, and we're very excited to be interviewing you today. Can you tell me your name, where you're from, and how long you've been in Preble County?
My name is Robert Armacost. I'm 93 years and 7 months old exactly today, and it's all been spent in Preble County. In fact, I only moved 5 miles from where I was born, so I haven't got very far in the world, really. But
Where at in Preble County have you lived?
a little town called, well, in the country, it was New Hope Station. It was a railroad station for New Hope, the big city of New Hope, 100 years ago. So that's where I'm from, and that's where I still do a lot of thinking. Yes.
Can you tell us what a typical day in your life as a young boy was like?
Well, it would depend on the age, but when I was old enough to go hunting, Raymond Lacey and I would go hunting in Smith's Woods, and we had one brush pile up there that we called Old Faithful, because we could about always kick that brush pile, and a rabbit would go out. So that was Old Faithful. And we did that many years, well, not many years, but when I suppose from age 10 to 16, I suppose we did that and had a good time doing it. That was the fun part. Now, there's a lot of things I can remember that wasn't necessarily fun, but I enjoyed them. I can remember horses bringing wagons of wheat up in the elevator. And one summer, or one wheat harvest, they had over 100 loads that one day in that little elevator, and that was quite a bit. And the country elevator at that time, it really all they did was handle wheat. Corn was all fed the livestock, the homegrown corn, and they even shipped hominy in from Illinois to feed the livestock. So it's changed 100% since then.
So can you tell me where you went to school?
I went to school at Jackson in Campbellstown, Ohio. Large school. I think they had about 110 pupils in kindergarten through senior. But that's my formal education came from Jackson Township.
How did you get to school?
Well, I rode a bus many years until I was old enough to have a car. Then I drove to school. But when we rode the bus, it seemed like I was the first one on and the last one off. And that wasn't too much fun, but that's just the way it worked.
Tell me about your first car.
My first car was a 1937 Plymouth Coupe. And it wasn't a very good car, but it got me to school and back, and I had a lot of fun that car.
It did its job, huh?
Yeah, it did its job, you betcha.
What is one of your favorite childhood memories?
I got a lot of them, but probably one of them would be going to Cales Creek to go swimming when I was 10 years old. We borrowed some feed sacks off of Dad, and we dammed up, or filled them full of dirt, and we dammed up the creek. So we had one place there probably 10 feet long and 3 feet wide that was actually 6 feet deep, and that's where I learned to swim. So that was and I've always enjoyed swimming.
Any other stories that you can think of?
Well, probably none that I should tell.
Tell me about your Ornery Days. Did you get in trouble?
Yeah, I was kind of ornery in school. I didn't sit still. I was kind of like Rodney Creech in one sense of the word. I enjoyed going to school.
Yeah.
I didn't study very much because after I got out of school, I was going to be working at Dad's elevator, shoveling corn and coal. We handled coal. And really, in those early years, the elevator didn't do anything but handle wheat in the summertime and sold coal. There was no feed grinding. That all came later on. That all came in 46 on up. That's when they put a hammer mill and feed mixers and so on and so forth.
How old were you when you started working?
Actually, I worked the elevator when I was probably 12 years old. Dad actually paid me too. When I was a kid, he paid me for working. I had to keep track of my time, and he paid me so much an hour. Wasn't very much, but a little bit.
Do you remember how much?
No, I don't. But I do know that I used to ride my bicycle to New Hope and cut asparagus for Al Bishop. And cutting asparagus is a hard job because you got to cut it off under the ground. You're bent over and you cut off under the ground, one with your knife and hold the other hand. And I got paid 20 cents an hour for doing that. Fantastic wage. And I did that for a couple of years too, really. That was better. That was 20 cents an hour was better than nothing. So we did it.
Tell us a little bit about your career and how you got started and why.
Well, I just walked into it because that's what Dad had the elevator. He came from Maryland, and he's originally his ancestors came from a little town called Needlebrunn, France. Well, Needlebrunn, Germany then, just Needlebrunn, France now. I've gone back as far as 1732, and that's where my dad originated years ago. And but he was born and raised in Maryland, near Baltimore, and he wanted to get out of that area, so he came to Cincinnati, and I think he'd run a bus, trolley in Cincinnati for a while, and it was down along the Ohio River, and he got rheumatism, and he blamed the Ohio River for him getting rheumatism, and he decided to come farther north, so he came up into New Madison area, and then he bought the elevator at New Hope, I think in 1912, and that's still where I was until I sold it in 1986. So.
What did a typical day at work look like for you?
It varied at what time of year it was. Of course, I was older, and we sold coal, so we unloaded coal a lot in the summertime, and then we hauled coal in the wintertime too. And then we started in 1946. Dad bought a Cummins diesel engine. We went to Dayton Power and Light, tried to get three-phase power, and they wouldn't do it. So he bought a Cummins engine in Cincinnati, and we installed it and put a hammer wheel and feed mixers in. And before it was done, Dayton Power and Light come in and says, "We'll give you power." So we used a diesel for probably 10 years, and then switched over to all electric. Because if on a diesel power, it's line shaft. You're on that one entry out of the transmission, you might say. It just runs a belt to something, and that runs to something else, So it's not as good as an electric motor on each individual piece of equipment. So before I was over with, we all had everything electric on every piece of equipment. And it changed through the years too. When fertilizer came into existence too, I mean, we sold fertilizer. And then a little later on, Harry Dills came over from Kitchell, Indiana, and wanted to know if we handle liquid fertilizer. And Dad says, "Nope, don't have nothing to do with that." I said, "Dad, I think we ought to." So we did, and it turned out to be a good investment for us to handle liquid fertilizer. And I can remember we sold many, many, many tons of 28% nitrogen, which is still used very heavily. And we sold it for $56 a ton. Now, the same thing costs you about $300 a ton, between $250 and $300. I don't know exactly, but it's a lot higher than it was when we sold it. So, but it worked out. But it got so that we had something to do the year round. And then we put a grain dryer in. In 1954, we put a big corn sheller in. The Triumph corn sheller. It was modern at that time. And we put a grain dryer in, which not too many people had grain dryers. And we handled a lot of ear corn from then on. But now it's all shell corn, all the major combines. And I can remember people would have a Blackhawk corn planter, and that pulled by horses, and then they get a tractor and they'd put two of those together and make a 4-row corn planter. And then it's gone from up to 30 or 40 row planters now. It's just changed that much. It has really changed. And I guess it's to the good. Everything it's get bigger, go home now. And I didn't think I want to get big, so I sold out in 1986 to a friend of mine, and he ran it till the year 2000. And there's no country elevators anymore. You gotta be, like I said, bigger. You can't exist. And you have to. We had a couple semis, but you need a bunch of them now and it's just altogether different. And
Everything's changing.
Pardon?
Everything's changing.
Oh gosh, yes, it really is.
What was your favorite part of your job?
Oh, I don't know.
Any
of them was fun, and any of them was a hard work. We had customers that were kind of a pain in the neck, And then we had some that was funny. They kept you laughing. When they come in the driveway, you knew you were going to enjoy the day because they're going to do something to make you laugh. And that was a part of it you really enjoy.
Tell me about some of your customers that you had. Some names in Preble County that we might recognize.
Well, Jennings Farrell was one that was a good customer. Jimmy Jordan, we sold him a lot of fertilizer, well, a lot of different things. We had a lot of good customers, really. That's two that I can think of offhand.
Wonderful.
Fred Prang was a good customer.
Who was it?
Fred Prang.
Okay.
I know Fred was a German that came over in, I think, 1916 and didn't have any money at all. And I think he went to work for the Montgomery County Home, I believe he did. And I don't know how he did it, but he got enough money scraped up to buy a farm in Dixon Township on 122. And that's turned into, he did a real fantastic job. And then his daughter married Annalie Prang, married James Haber, and they did real good. And now their son is doing, their sons are doing good. So agriculture's been good to those people.
Tell us about your family. How many kids and grandkids and great-grandkids?
I had 3 daughters. My wife taught school, and we had 3 daughters, no boys. That's probably one reason I didn't get bigger, because I didn't have nobody to take on. I had her out here one day to work, and she says she didn't like that very well. So we decided I wasn't for her. So she went to school, went to Miami and became a teacher, and her 2 sisters did too, and they all met their husbands there. And I've got, well, one daughter's got a divorce, but her husband was a good person too. But the other 2 are super people, really. If I was picking son-in-laws, I'd do the same thing again. But I had nothing to do with it to start with. But they're good people. I love them.
What about his grandkids?
I have 11 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, and they're a lot of fun too. Now we dined at can't say it, Skyline before we came down here, and 3 of them was with me. And the little one is a little over a year old, and I went like this to him. Pretty soon he was doing the same thing to him, and he did that all the time. I enjoy him. And then I also got a little granddaughter who's named Jane, and Dan is a boy. You look at him, he's a boy. You look at Jane, and she's a dainty little girl, and that's the truth too, really.
So what are some of your favorite things to do around Preble County when you get out?
Well, there's a lot of things to do in Preble County, really. And one of my favorite things, after I could learn how to swim, in the summertime, I would go to New Paris to Stone Quarry. And that was super water and a good place to swim if you could swim. And I enjoyed that as much as anything in the summertime. There's a lot of good things to do in Preble County. You don't have to go as far. Like coming here. This is a good place to come and visit and see what has happened. You've done a fine job on displaying all this, what happened 100 years ago and 80 years ago. You've done a fine job.
It has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you
and
your family.
Thank you.
So we are so thankful that you're here today to do this interview for us. What was your biggest influence and why?
Oh gosh, I don't know really how to say. There's a lot of things. You have to be thinking all the time and trying to, try to keep up with what's going on and stay competitive. I can't answer that as a one thing. There's many things.
If there were a different career path, what would you have chosen?
I always thought I'd be an airline pilot. But after you get to thinking about it, an airline pilot has ungodly hours too. That's one thing I thought about now, the elevator. At wheat harvest and corn harvest, you worked as long as you could stay alive, you worked. And I thought, well, I don't like this that well. But if you're a waitress at a restaurant, you have all ungodly hours too. I think about the eating place, for example. Those girls they don't have to work Sunday. They get holidays off. They're taken care of pretty well in tips, I think. That's a pretty good job. But I don't know. There's a lot of things good. Airplane pilots would be nice, but like I say, they're ungodly. You have to. My daughter was a stewardess. One of them, the middle daughter, was a flight attendant for Delta for a couple of years, and they'd leave here at 7 o'clock at night to go to London. We get there at 6 o'clock London, about 6 o'clock London time, with no sleep to speak of, and they had rough hours too. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the elevator, about the Armacost Elevator, like your business and where it was located and how long it had been in operation. And
well, it was located at New Hope Station, which is south of New Hope. Was New Hope Station called at that time originally, and it was started by a fellow named Ed Ozias, I believe, about 2004, if in that vicinity. I don't know exactly. And Dad came here in 2012. He was Armacost Richards for a while, and then finally Dad bought out Richards, just Armacost, and that was 1912 up until 1985. It was Armacost.
Wow, very good. And then lastly, if you had to give any advice to future generations, what would that be?
Work hard and whatever you do it to the best of your ability, and don't complain all the time. Do what the boss wants you to do and make him happy, and it will probably pay off. You might go on. If you complain a lot, it's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. So be friendly, be religious, be honest. You got to be honest. That's all there is to it, and you just got to be a good American citizen, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thank you very much, Bob, for meeting with us today and answering some questions for us so we could get some of your history recorded. And you are so special to us. And on behalf of the Preble County Historical Society, we want to thank you for being here today. And we look forward to many visits from you in the future.
It's been my pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Good.
Yep. And you do a fine job.
Thank you.
Certainly.